Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bottled Up. I'm your co-host, Daniel, aka Non-Quarter Zip Posner.
And I am your co-host, Jermaine, Wolf of Limestone. The
Sticking
year of
with
the wolf.
Year of the Wolf. For you,
It's the year of the wolf, man.
for me, I got mocked, so I switched up to the finance bro look today.
Right now, I went tracksuit.
I came straight out
Um,
of the gym today. New Year's resolution day for you.
You know what? If I had my choice, I would wear tracksuits every single day.
I would let you wear tracksuits every day too.
Did we call it athleisure? I'm an athleisure kind of guy. I'm wearing what they call the unk phase. I hang out with my nephews a lot, like
Nice.
7, 3, and 1. You know, that stage.
Unk is a new one for me. My oldest daughter turned 20 in December, and my youngest daughter, Allison, started calling Abigail Unk. She's like, "Oh, you're Unk now." And I'm like, "What is that?" So I guess when you turn 20, you're 30, you're all Unks.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it. What's bottling you up today,
All right,
Jermaine, a.k.a. the Wolf of Limestone?
I'm going to touch on something. Why do we have to make every single thing trendy? As a social media dude, that sounds crazy. I do what I do on social media out of necessity. I'm a very private person. If I wasn't doing what I do, I probably wouldn't even have a social media page because so much of this stuff is just so irritating. It's trendy. And then that permeates into other cultures, and then people are locking in on the wrong thing. And that's what's bothering me. Now, when you dig into it, there are lots of people mentioning not drinking alcohol for health reasons. There are lots of people that abuse alcohol. So I get it. I get that things need to happen in order to get better with that. I understand that sometimes you have to make a big change to be able to do something. Like,
Yeah, that bothers me. We need to invent a holiday where wine needs to be part of the culture, right? And that's what's missing. We get Thanksgiving in November, you got to have wine on the table.
right.
Christmas, you got to have wine. New Year's, there needs to be some meaningful cultural thing. You got
Right.
Valentine's Day, then you get into March, and that's when you really roll into college spring breaks.
And that's the whole thing. I feel like the focus is different.
Yep.
You're not going to fix anything. And this goes back to what I was talking about with regard to intention. I look at alcohol overall as the scenic route, not the expressway. That's my vibes. Like, number one, don't get me wrong. Like I said, every once in a while, yeah, if the mood strikes and we doing Long Island iced teas, I'm with that kind of smoke.
I can't hang with that group anymore, but I respect you for being able to do that.
There have been times I've regretted it, and my age reminded me, you're not allowed to do this anymore.
Yeah. Just one where I was like, man, I'm too old for this.
For me, I'll talk about myself and how I manage my drinking, right? I work in the alcohol business, and I don't really drink at home like that. I drink socially. I drink with friends. If someone comes over for dinner, or maybe I got this movie that I'm into and I want to make a nice meal. And so for me, I come to it from a different perspective of drinking. And I think that is the key that needs to change. Talk about what we are actually losing by not participating in culture. There are places in the world where this alcohol drink is definitive of the people. And you are just going to say, okay, I'm just not going to learn about that part of the world. To me, that's corny. What I get from alcohol is a lot more personal development. The people that I've connected with by sitting down with them and having a glass of wine, I would have never met if I wasn't in this business. I utilize that to teach me about people, learn about history. How much French history I learned just by studying wine. I love history. I'm interested in history. So the intention is what needs to change. And because the other piece is, of course, selfishly, yes, I'm going to say it. Yo, the industry dies with change and in evolution.
We don't do any events in January anymore the last couple of years.
It don't make sense.
We do these well-received private client events in the city once a month in New York for our limited group of clients that come and get to drink great wine and decide what they want to purchase. We don't do it in January. So I don't want to waste anyone's time. We don't do any wine dinners. We do in-store tastings, obviously, in January. And it affects an industry. And that's why even October, November, December, quarter four, This industry is supposed to be real strong, and that's
Yeah.
reduced now to November, December. October is like, well, I'm sober for October.
Yeah. A lot of companies, that quarter makes their entire year. The other piece is I think people are making these decisions based on skewed information. We got the World Health Organization as well as the US Surgeon General talking about negative effects of alcohol.
I had a good conversation with my kids over dinner recently where they said to me, Dad, like 20 years ago, they were endorsing red wine as something positive for your health. And now we're not doing that anymore. Like wine is bad. What changed? The recipe for wine hasn't changed. It's been around thousands of years. It's not laced with fentanyl all of a sudden. What has changed that one glass a day that doctors were recommending for decades? My son then brought up cigarettes, because when cigarettes came out, they were telling you there were health benefits of cigarettes. I don't know enough about it. And Andrew, my 15-year-old son, is a wealth of knowledge on almost anything. And I was looking up, sure enough, in the 50s and 60s, they were saying that cigarettes would help your heart or some crap like that. And I was like, wow. But wine inevitably goes back to the cultural aspect, the whole you're having a meal aspect and enjoying a glass of something. If you're having a steak dinner in November, December, or January, that steak dinner merits a glass of great red wine. It just does. So why are you giving that up just because culture now is telling you in social media, you shouldn't have that glass of red wine? Is that really necessary? Is that really changing your world? We just want to encourage what's already been in existence for literally hundreds of years, and in particular the last few decades. There's so much bad out there promoting prohibitionist tendencies, and it's on a global level, as you mentioned, World Health Organization. This is not just a U.S. problem. This is now global.
That whole thing, it starts, from what I understand, I believe in Ireland, there's a group that's really pushing for that and developed some advanced relationships with the World Health Organization, and that's how that got taken up. And of course, that's being pushed into the US Surgeon General. The problem with today's era is once you say it, it's a fact. No one does any research anymore. AI only screws that up even worse because now people see shit and they're like, no, I saw, or whatever. But when you dig into the numbers, the Surgeon General changed alcohol to become a level 1 carcinogen, meaning it's just as dangerous as cigarettes.
Yep. And more dangerous than candy bars. Why aren't we having soda eliminated for months?
The amount of plastics we use. Yeah. Have you ever been to Memphis? Hello?
But we're targeting wine. Why is wine so hated?
One of the sites the Surgeon General put in their report was the amount of cancer deaths. I believe they said it was 1 million cancer deaths related to alcohol. However, there's a lot more nuance to that, because how many cancer deaths were there? When you look at the actual percentage of cancer-related deaths that they're reporting that are linked to alcohol versus how many actual deaths related to cancer there were, that report didn't mention anything about people that maybe had like cancer in their family or were a bit more receptive. There's too much you don't know. Furthermore, the reasons that we could get cancer have also shot out the roof.
Yeah, of course.
Yo, what is it? That yellow dye that's in Kraft mac and cheese? Like, why is that not a level 1 carcinogen? Yeah. There's so many different things like that. So let's look at that.
There was something to that where the Surgeon General on that day in 2023, they were having a bad day with alcohol. Maybe they woke up off a bender and they were like, man, we got to cut out alcohol. I'm hungover. Let's start right there at the top level. Let's do something radical. The worst part about this, by the way, is our industry sucks at combating this. We are always so reactive instead of proactive. That's why my 15-year-old son it's now in his head, wine is bad, Dad.
Yeah, that's true.
We were lied to like cigarettes in the 1960s. I'm not saying he thinks that way, but that's what he's being taught at some level.
And to your point, my daughter is 7 and she can tell you how to make wine. My nephew is 7 and he's, that looks like he sees a bottle of Lambrusco. He understands Lambrusco is supposed to be red. He understands what Prosecco is. And they understand these things by them seeing me create these videos and talk about, like, my daughter's in the background a lot when I'm writing and recording. They are developing a different relationship with alcohol because of what I'm instilling in them. They're developing a relationship with alcohol from a cultural and academic aspect and understanding there's more to it than just getting drunk. So it comes back to the intention and responsibility of how we introduce these things to our kids and manage and navigate them. We both have kids in college. We both have to have these conversations. And we also go into it with the understanding that kids is going to do what they're going to do. Like you're learning the world as an industry. And I'll never just put this on the people. Once again, as the industry, we are the experts. We have to do a better job controlling the narrative on drinking. Don't let outside influences be what defines what the narrative around drinking is going to be. It's not their game.
We've been sitting on our hands for decades about it. We let the outside voices control it 110% every time. It's come full circle to where wine is poison, wine is bad, wine causes cancer. We are controlled by a chosen few in this industry. It's very regulated. There's a few people getting extremely wealthy off of this topic. And we're at the point now in 2026 where we have to rethink, how do we change things? How do we go back? How do we make wine more back to culture? It's just not part of the narrative of what, at whatever level lobbying we're doing, we're not there. We're not even close to that.
So I'm curious, and I feel like you would have a great aspect on this. Alcohol makes so much money, right? Powerful people drink it and love it and enjoy it. How are we losing this lobbying fight?
I think we're losing it because it's once you start peeling back the onion, the people who are making all that money you're talking about, they're at the top of the regulated system. Those are the importers, the distributors control 70, 80% of all sales in this country. And they're happy, as they should be, because they're sitting on suitcases of cash, allowing for it all to unfold. And even if people drink a little bit less, even if they don't buy as much, it all still funnels through them. And all they got to do to continue making their money is just laying off some people, eliminating some jobs, sell a few trucks because the trucks aren't as full going out on deliveries. And that's all they're doing.
But does that not hurt future profits when a situation like now where there is a stark fall off with Gen Z in their relationship to alcohol?
But this is where we're not proactive. We're reactive. They're not thinking 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line. And I see the problem with Gen Y, and everyone says, don't give up on Gen Y, and we're not. But you also have to start looking at Gen Z.
Because Gen Z is going to influence.
Right, because you hope that we get a proper educational system of alcohol in Gen Z's hands before it's too late. Because for Gen Y, they already have their thoughts, their tendencies, they've got other problems. And Gen Y are millennials. We've changed the name millennial to Gen Y. It makes sense. Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z. But we're always reactive in everything we do. Even in New York State, almost 20 years old, this argument about wine in grocery stores. And we push back since 2009, this has been a hot topic. But the reality is our industry and New York merchants in general, we continue to lose. Our sales are dipping. Stores are closing. The value of my store, if I were to sell it tomorrow, is worth less than it was 10 years ago. There's a reason for that. So what are we gaining by keeping wine out of grocery stores? Who's winning that battle? It's not New York retailers, contrary to what they think. They're not winning.
Yeah.
We're not winning as an industry, as a coalition or as an association or whatever, as a group. There's less of us than there were 5, 10 years ago, and we're making less money than we did 5, 10, 15 years ago. To what end do we keep pushing back on that? How do we get people drinking, and how do we be more proactive? And I say drinking, I don't mean to obliteration. I just mean culturally with meals and whatever. How do we get to that point and say, okay, this is okay. This is how we're going to get Gen Z and perhaps even Gen Y and the next generations to realize that wine is not the devil. Because right now as an industry, we are letting them control that narrative. And why isn't there more pushback about it? Why are we just accepting that? We all know the problems with who, but why are we letting them control that? Where are the studies to show that wine is okay, that red wine does reduce blood pressure and heart disease. Were people on the take for that? Are they on the take now? I don't know. But to your point, there's healthy people consuming wine, and they have
you got wine regions that are blue zones. Sardinia is a blues. They're paying young people to move there because people are dying because they're just too old. There's just too many old people there.
We should move to Sardinia.
Sardinia was one of the most beautiful places I had ever been in my entire life.
Yeah, I bet.
It is amazing. I'm not a swim in the ocean guy.
Why don't you swim in the ocean?
It's too deep. It's just, I'm worried. And mind you, I can swim. I can swim 20, 30 feet in the pools. It's a mental thing, the abyss of the oceans. But that said, I think that we also need to, when we're talking about as an industry doing better, it's not just you and I. It is definitely the importers, the distributors, the producers. When we look at reduced consumption number, we reduce sales number. What was the most consumed wine? The cheap stuff. So although people want to purchase higher quality, more money doesn't mean higher quality. It's the perceived idea of higher quality by spending money on something more expensive. Maybe we need to now make our focus quality and help people understand the quality around it. That's going to have to change the way that we speak about wine.
We have such an arrogance where when you talk about growers and producers, they'd rather literally drop fruit on the ground and destroy it than make less expensive wine. You look at what goes on everywhere else, Australia, now in California. Port is the biggest offender. When people say they can only declare a port 3 times a decade, there is no law in Portugal that says you can only make a vintage port 3 times a decade. Producers decided that because they held vintage port in such prestige and wanted to put it up on a pedestal. They said, we should only do this 3 times a decade. One of the port houses will make a vintage. No one buys any port anymore because no one drinks sweet wine because it's got so much sugar in it. And the dietary restrictions tell you sugar is bad. No one buys current vintage port because you can buy 30, 40, 50-year-old vintage port, which you're supposed to age it 30, 40, 50 years for the same price.
How does Tawny do with you guys?
It does pretty well.
For those of you that don't know, Tawny port is a different type of port. You have Tawny port, vintage port, ruby port. There's different types of port.
Vintage port gets bottled immediately like a regular wine within a year or 2, 3 years, whatever, after the laws dictate in Porto. But then you get 10-year-old that gets held in the barrels for longer, 20-year-old, 30-year-old. That gets held back for longer periods of time, sells for less, but is also released later from the port houses, which is ironic because the most expensive port is vintage port. And that comes out immediately. Like you come into the store and you're like, all right, this Dow's vintage port is $100. The Dow's late bottle vintage port, even the same vintage, is 75% less. And so there's a whole other port is just in that world. And that's why that's why dry reds have become so popular and fashionable. And all of a sudden they're making dry reds. They're making dry red wine in those areas because nobody's drinking the sweet stuff. So they finally realized it took them up until about 20 years ago. Like Quinta de Naval is one of the first producers to start making really great dry red wines in the area. They all do it now because they have to do it. People would drink and buy more vintage port if the price were less. And the price could have been less if they decided to make it more than 3 times a decade. It's that arrogance level. You see what goes on in Napa now. Even Piedmont and Barolo, you can buy Kirkland's signature Costco Barolo for $19.99. Why is everyone else's entry level $40? Because they refuse
to bring that price down. That is a very good point, man. So look, guys, we're not just trying to blame culture. We're not just trying to blame social media. We are also taking that hard look at ourselves. This is something we want to change. We all need to change it.
Yeah, we're wrong. All of us. We have it backwards.
There's a lot more. We might have to have a part 2 at a certain point, but you got to talk through some things. So guys, we're not just negative Nancy's here.
I'm pretty negative. 25 years.
I have been told that positivity is my superpower. I am the glass half full kind of guy.
So with that, Daniel, AKA Finance Bro Posner today, along with my esteemed co-host,
Jermaine Showtime Stone, aka the Wolf of Wine.
Showtime Wolf of Wine Stone. It's been our pleasure.
Change my name and put Showtime in it, to be honest with you. I don't know.
You should. You deserve it. Let's do that. Let's get on that. All right. We'll see you
Yeah.
again next time. Make sure to download the podcast wherever you're streaming your podcasts, and we'll see you again very soon.
Yes. Peace.
Peace.